Welcome to the Breaking News Bears podcast. I'm your host, Chris Capone, joined alongside my co-host once again, Emma Davis. And Shohei Ohtani has done it. Yesterday on September 19th, 2024, he had become the first player in MLB history to hit 50 home runs and steal 50 bases in a single season. The 50-50 club has its inaugural member. We'll obviously discuss this momentous achievement, just along with possibly the best single game in MLB history. And we'll also talk about just how have the Tigers gone from sellers to the trade deadline to all of a sudden being tied with the Twins for the final AL wildcard spot. And lastly, we'll discuss the Milwaukee Brewers and more notably Jackson Chourio winning the NL Central and looking to have a better postseason than they did last year. But first, Evan, just what are your thoughts on Shohei Ohtani having this greatest single game in Major League history yesterday?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely up there. He was two total bases back of tying former Dodger legend Sean Green for most total bases in a game, 17 total bases yesterday. I mean, pretty incredible. Not only just having six hits, but five of them for extra base hits. He had three home runs, two doubles, and his first double went 400 feet, basically. And it was honestly probably one of the most insane games I've ever seen from a player, let alone just a Dodger player. And you look at all the records that Ohtani broke last night, the first 50-50 season in MLB history. I wrote down everything. It was the most RBIs from a leadoff spot in a single game in MLB history with 10. He tied Ricky Henderson for most games with a home run and a stolen base in a single season with 13. He's won back of Ricky Henderson for most games in a single season with one home run and two stolen bases. He has four. Henderson had five. He's the first player in MLB history with three home runs and two stolen bases in a single game. And he accumulated a .7 F-WAR in that game alone. And just for context, a guy like Alex Verdugo has a .7 F-WAR this entire season. And then he
Yeah.
also, on top of it, broke the Dodgers single season home run record. And that feels like the last thing people think about. Honestly, the craziest game I've ever seen. And to cap it off with now him hitting the postseason for the first time, which was kind of expected when he signed with the Dodgers.
Yeah, just an utterly insane night last night for Shohei Ohtani. Like, just getting the notification being like Ohtani homered, and then it's like, oh, he's one away. Then he hits it again, and then the last homer, obviously, it was off a position player, but still, where he sent that ball was insane.
I
Like,
was I was just so happy he didn't hit 50 off a position player. Like I would have been so heated.
yeah, people would have said like Mickey Mouse, like
Yeah.
not a real 50-50 hit it off a position player, but he's not that far off of Aaron Judge for the league lead. And I don't think when Judge went on that super hot tear in the middle of August where like every game he was hitting a home run, I don't think anyone thought that, oh, like Judge isn't gonna hit 60 again.
hmm
Because he's been kind of on a dry spell recently.
hmm
Um, so I'm just thinking like, is there any way that Shohei passes Aaron Judge for most home runs in the MLB? He's only two off right now.
it's very possible because to your point, Aaron Judge in the month of September only has two home runs. So it's not that insane to suggest that Shohei Ohtani also finishes the year with the most home runs. As I mentioned last week, they have six total games against the Rockies, three at home, which they start today, and then they finish the year in Colorado. And because of the three home run masterclass that Ohtani had last night, he has seven home runs this month. So it's very, very possible that he passes up Aaron Judge. And if he does, could he also become the first player in MLB history to unanimously win the MVP both in the AL and in the NL? Because if anyone votes for Lindor at this point, they should just have their vote revoked.
Somebody like John Heyman's gonna vote for Lindor.
Oh,
But
God.
but that's what I like. I think it's honestly once Ohtani hit 50-50, I think any shot of Lindor winning MVP is over now. It doesn't even matter. The Mets, he hasn't even been playing this past week, and the Mets are still winning games. Scored 10 runs in three straight games for the first time ever in their franchise history. Lindor hasn't been a part of any of it. So Luis Angel Acuna is filling up that shortstop position while Lindor is out. Obviously he's not as good as Lindor, but he's not as big. Like this momentous occasion for Ohtani is just insane. 51 home runs, 51 stolen bases, unheard of.
I know, and I had to take a screenshot just of the box score last night because I just when are you ever going to see that type of box score where it's 6 for 6 with three? He hit a home run in each of his final three at bats. Like he didn't hit his first home run. I don't think until his third at bat because he started off with a double and then a single, and he could have almost hit for the cycle too, which is also crazy. He got tagged out at third trying to
Yeah,
stretch a double into a triple. So could you have imagined hitting 50-50 and then also hitting for the cycle in the same game? Like I
that that would
that's
undoubtedly make it like
the
there's no
greatest game of
shot.
all time.
Yeah, there's
But
no shot anyone would ever be close to the to that like level.
and what's even like crazier to me, and obviously Judge is going through this dry spell. Like Ohtani didn't hit his first home run of the season until like the eighth or ninth game. Like he was kind of struggling out of the gate. Like he had a 638 OPS at one point, was really kind of, getting used to playing in the correct LA market. But yeah, I'm not joking. But it's crazy. I mean, the contract is already paid for itself. Like I don't think there's a number that you could put on Shohei Ohtani to say that he's properly paid, just given how talented he is. And I kind of feel bad for Willie Adames. He was only one RBI away from being the leader in the National League, and I think Ohtani kind of made it difficult for Willie Adames, who we'll talk about later. But it's I just hope we get this in October. That's the like Ohtani in October is what the MLB has been needing. And now they'll finally get it. And now it's just a matter of is he able to succeed in October? But there's also just something about playing in Miami for Ohtani. Like he
Yeah.
wins the World Baseball Classic there, and then also this insane game.
Yeah, and one thing about Otani in the postseason, do you think it's possible that he closes a game if it's
Oh no,
really
he's not
needed?
pitching. He's not pitching. Like there's no
They
way.
keep eluding.
Like they keep alluding to it, but and I don't know, like I just heard Jeff Passan this morning on Get Up saying like Ohtani is throwing bullpen sessions as if he's like planning to pitch because usually when like pitchers throw a bullpen session, you're kind of just throwing sliders, just trying to figure out your command and velocity. And apparently he's already throwing like the splitter and slider and all that. But like if you're the Dodgers, the guy hasn't pitched in over a year. Why would you try an Octo? Like, why would you even entertain that? Like, obviously the pitching situations aren't ideal, but the Dodgers have the fifth best bullpen ERA in the major leagues. Like, I don't think it's not like their bullpen is shattered. Like, it just you have Trinan, you have Vesia. I mean, obviously Bonda broke his own hand like a dummy, but
Mhm.
you have Trinan, Vesia, you have Hudson. Obviously, you have Kopech. Like I might be forgetting some guys, but like those are your mainstays. Oh, Evan Phillips, you have him as well. Like you don't need Ohtani pitching. Like there's too many guys that I would go to first before I would even think of Shohei Ohtani. And if you look at like the starting rotation, it's most likely going to be a variation of probably Flaherty gets game one, Yamamoto gets game two. I want Landon Knack to get game three. It's probably going to be Walker Bueller. He did look good in his start against the Braves. I mean, obviously he had 5 walks, but I've never seen a team foul off more pitches than the Braves. But I don't think like the Dodgers have Ohtani for 9 more years after this. I don't think it's worth any risk in him pitching in October. Just let him chill in the off season and then let him be. I don't know where he would fit in the rotation. You just have to wait with free agency.
Yeah, I'm really thinking that like the only way if Otani has to come in and pitch a game is if we're 20 innings in.
Yeah,
If there's like an unprecedented amount of innings where it's like it's 3 a.m. in the morning. It's the game has gone on forever. And
yeah,
it's like, well, they're throwing out a position player and we could throw out Otani and
yeah. Well, I mean, it's like the Dodgers and Red Sox game three when Nathan Eovaldi was supposed to pitch game four, but because of how long the game went in game three, they just threw him in. And
yeah.
like maybe that's the situation. And I mean, I love Dave Roberts, but sometimes it's like, dude, like don't even let fans think he's pitching in October because
All it takes
like
is one blow up, and
yeah,
then
like
people are gonna have his
why?
head.
Like why? Why would you want him going into the off season with like, damn, I didn't do well in my first start in October in the biggest moment. Like let his first start be against the Marlins or the White Sox. Like let him build up his confidence.
Yeah. Let him start next year. Wait until, or not wait, but like he could be the ace day one, have him like a whole ceremonial thing,
Yeah.
get your World Series rings, and then. But yeah, I think honestly, with what Otani has been doing, I don't think you risk it going into the postseason, even though Dave Roberts won't shut up about it and say,
Yeah.
and just let him let him get back to where he was last year. Like he's a career 3.0 ERA pitcher. I wouldn't want to see him in the postseason where he's basically forced to come out and play just because of, you know, there's no one else available, or like the Dodgers rotation is shot to all hell.
Yeah, and look, like I just obviously, not an ideal situation. I mean, I was never really a fan of the glass now move just because he's made of glass. Like you can look at my Twitter. The second the trade happened, I was just like, what are we doing? Like, why are we trading for Tyler Glass now? Because he's horrible in the postseason, and then he also just can't stay healthy. But, obviously you weren't expecting Gavin Stone to be hurt. After Bobby Miller had 11 strikeouts in his first start, his next 12 starts, he had an ERA above 9. So he got sent down to AAA. At this point, it's the offense that's just really going to have to carry this team. You saw how they were really great in the final two games of the series against the Atlanta Braves, hitting off Max Fried and Charlie Morton. I mean, not a great sign that they got smoked by Schwellenbach and Sale. Those are two phenomenal pitchers, though. I mean, if only the Braves could make it into the postseason. And then obviously they scored the abundance of runs against the Marlins, which isn't really matter to me, but the offense is going to have to carry the load for this team. If a guy like Flaherty and Yamamoto can just give the Dodgers 5 to 6 solid innings in the playoffs, which I think they're more than capable of doing, just the offense has to score anywhere between like 3 to 5 runs for them to really win.
Yeah, like the offense just has to be, you just have to have your three guys hit. Like this, that's
Hmm.
the most important thing for the Dodgers. The three guys, Mookie, Otani, and Freddie all need to
Hmm.
hit. You can't have those games where it's like they go combined 1 for 15 or something. You can't have those games in the postseason where you're paying them so much money. Your entire franchise is built around these three guys
Hmm.
where you need them to hit well. And lucky enough, you even have some other guys in the lineup that can make up for that too. You can have them go 1 for 15, but you can have Teoscar go like 3 for 5.
Hmm.
It's you need, but you need those three guys to show up in the postseason. And I think Otani is definitely going to show up in the postseason. I think it's not like he had anything to do with them not making the Angels never making the postseason. It's
Hmm.
what what needs to happen though is they just all need to perform. If they all perform to similar to what they're doing right now, I'm not even saying they all match their same output. If they can just do even a little bit less than what they're doing currently, they're probably going to win the World Series. But it's all comes down to pitching. If they can just out hit, if they can score 20 runs every game, obviously they're unbeatable. They can give up 15 runs as long as they score 20. It'll be
Hmm.
football scores every day.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, like to your point, I like the depth of this Dodgers team more than last year. Because I mean, you look at a guy like Tommy Edman who made two phenomenal plays at shortstop yesterday, to keep the game, out of arm's reach of the Marlins. But we know Edman is a Gold Glove defender in center field, shortstop, anywhere you put him, second base. And he's a switch hitter, batting 284 this year with an 824 OPS. you have Teoscar Hernandez who 29 home runs, 90 RBIs. You know what Max Muncy's capable of doing. Miguel Rojas is quietly having a career year at age 35, hitting 296. Obviously not playing as many games, but Dodgers are just trying to preserve him. He's only appeared in 98 this year, but still a 3.3 WAR on the year. I like the depth of this team a lot more than I did last year. And I think that's the difference where last year you kind of had to play Kike Hernandez and Chris Taylor at the bottom of your lineup every game. And it just wasn't feasible. Also, Gavin Lux was really struggling, and he has struggled over his last handful of games. The Linsanity run is over for Gavin Lux, but I think he's a more polished hitter than he was in the previous seasons.
Yeah, I think keeping Miguel Rojas healthy and available is going to be pay massive dividends for the Dodgers in the postseason because the the experiment with Mookie at shortstop, I know they wanted it to work out, but you need somebody who's played the position and is a veteran of the position for such a long time to be there in the postseason and not commit errors pretty much. And
Mhm.
having Mookie back in the lineup is another huge thing for them. Like him playing right field every day. That's his position. Uh, the shortstop experiment was cool, but you need them.
Mhm.
You need people playing their correct positions. And Miguel Rojas, a 769 OPS this year, he's been doing it with the bat and doing it defensively, which is
Mhm.
not. I don't think many people were expecting that, and that's the reason. One of the main reasons why they put Mookie at shortstop. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, you look at it, like Gavin Lux was obviously struggling at short, and then you had Mookie Betts playing there. He was horrible defensively, but you were just trying to figure out what you could do, and that's why, as you mentioned, like guys like Miguel Rojas and Tommy Edman allow Mookie Betts to be the player that we all know he is, which is a right fielder, an elite right fielder, both offensively and defensively, and I think that's the difference. And, credit to Andrew Friedman, who just makes these under the radar type of moves. Like, I did not think Tommy Edman was going to be on anyone's radar just because he was injured. And the Dodgers had to wait 2 weeks for him to join. And Kevin Kiermaier obviously hasn't played a ton, but we know what he's capable of doing defensively. It's kind of just you rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah, and having Kiermaier in center field, no matter his age, I know he's retiring at the end of the year, but like
Hmm,
his defense is elite, and he could probably be 40 and still run the field insanely well.
it's crazy.
Moving on, we'll talk about the Detroit Tigers, who all of a sudden have went from sellers of the trade deadline, trading away Andrew Chafin, Jack Flaherty, to now all of a sudden being tied for the final AL wildcard spot. They're
Mhm.
28 and 16 since August 1st, tied with the Dodgers for the second best record, and only the Padres have a better record since then. Do you think that the Tigers will regret trading Jack Flaherty?
Like, it's so hard to say, yes or no, just because if you look at it, like the Trey Sweeney, who the Dodgers traded to the Tigers, has really helped out this team because since Javi Baez has gone down, obviously Sweeney's only batting 225, but he has 4 home runs through 80 at-bats and 15 RBIs, on base near 300. Like, obviously you would love to have the pitcher in Jack Flaherty, but Kader Montero, threw that complete game shutout not too long ago. Reese Olson's a solid option. Like, the bias in me is like, oh, I love Jack Flaherty on the Dodgers, but at the same time, I just think offensively, what you needed, Trey Sweeney going from LA to Detroit might have actually helped them because I just don't know what the backup plan would have been since Javi Baez has gone down with that injury. So I don't think they do. Like, obviously hindsight is 2020, but I just think the way that the acquisitions have been playing for them, maybe just having that mentality of we have nothing to lose was actually a benefactor to it.
Yeah, do you think now the Twins have been dealing with a bunch of injuries and recently some players have come back like Buxton and
Mhm.
but do you think that if the Tigers end up making it to the postseason, I think they're going to be the bigger threat because I think they literally have nothing to lose.
Hmm.
They're playing with house money right now.
Hmm.
Who do you think would be the bigger threat for any of the other like the division winners?
I mean, like if the Twins are fully healthy, I would say the Twins, but kind of like with the Dodgers and the pitching, the offense in the Twins is such a big if. And you look at Correa, Buxton, and Lewis, they haven't played a lot together. And that's the problem that they're dealing with is just they're trying to get guys back, but it's kind of too little too late because you can't be grooming guys back into the lineup this late into the year when you don't have a solidified playoff spot. And you look at the pitching staff of the Twins, like I would take them obviously over the Detroit Tigers just solely with Bailey Ober and Pablo Lopez. Like you could fill in the third starter. I don't really care who it is. You have Simeon Woods Richardson that you could throw in there, but like if the Twins are fully healthy, I would say them just because they have some pretty solid firepower. Carlos Santana has 22 home runs on the year. He's most likely going to win a Gold Glove at first base. Their bullpen is decent enough to get them through. Johan Duran has had his struggles up and downs, but he's still throwing 100. My only thing with the Tigers is these guys are so young. Like obviously AJ Hinch is an experienced manager with the Astros prior, but none of these guys have really played in October. So that's my only thing is like, yes, they're playing with house money, and that's what makes them dangerous. And that's this is the exact same thing I said about the Diamondbacks who went on to go to the World Series. But the Diamondbacks had a much more solidified pitching staff than the Tigers.
Yeah, and there's only so much that Tariq Skubal can do. He's been insane, but the other starters haven't. Like Kenta Maeda he's been moved to the bullpen. He has an ERA of 6.
Hmm.
Uh, and they do have. I trust the Twins bullpen a lot more. You just with Griffin Jackson, Johan Duran, you have like two monsters at the end of the Twins bullpen. While for the Tigers, you traded one of your best relievers in Andrew Chafin.
Hmm.
He's now on the Rangers.
Hmm.
Um, and other than that, Tyler Holton's been a really solid reliever, lefty, and Jason Foley is the closer, obviously. But
Hmm.
I don't know if I trust anyone more right now than the Twins bullpen. They have such a solid bullpen.
Hmm.
Um, just with those two guys at the end, I can trust them with anything. Like I trust them with my life.
Hmm.
Uh, but I really think that the one thing hurting the Tigers the most is the starting rotation, where you had if you'd somehow kept on to Flaherty and, still had this run going on, you'd have two guaranteed starters similar to what you have with the Twins right now with
Hmm.
Pablo Lopez and Bailey Ober, where I think I would take Tariq Skubal and Jack Flaherty over Pablo Lopez and Bailey Ober.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, because you just look at the way that Jack Flaherty has been pitching. Like his last two starts haven't been the most ideal, but yeah, you would want Flaherty and Skubal, but to the Tigers' credit, like if you knew that you weren't going to trade, if you knew you weren't going to re-sign Flaherty, like take the guaranteed years on a guy like a Trey Sweeney. But in the same breath, like, did anybody expect the Twins to fall off like this? And did anyone expect the Tigers to be this dominant? It's just I- they always say, like as I continuously say, like hindsight's 2020. Like they
Yeah.
easily could make the playoffs because you look at the Twins' remaining schedule, and right now both teams are tied for the third wild card spot. Like the Twins have three against Boston that they start off tonight, and then they play Miami and Baltimore. So six of their remaining nine games are against pretty solid competition. You look at the Tigers, they're back against the Orioles, but then they go play Tampa Bay and Chicago. And Tampa Bay obviously has a really dominant pitching staff, but their offense is anemic. And the White Sox I don't need to say anything about them. And the Tigers just took two of three against Baltimore at home and were one out away from no hitting them. Like the Orioles, we could even talk about just how much they've been struggling. Where now it's gotten to the point where the Yankees have kind of solidified the division. It used to be half game, and now the Orioles are four back, and they're looking at the wild card. And like, why can't the Tigers go into Baltimore and take another two of three? Like the Orioles are only 43 and 35 at home. Like they're not this overtly dominant team.
Yeah. That's another thing too. The Orioles are right now the prime position to play the Astros in the first round, right?
Hmm.
It's the third best division winner versus the top wild card, right?
Yeah, it would
That's
be the
gonna be
Orioles and Astros.
that's looking like a really good series. But yeah, just keep going on about the Tigers. Like they played Tampa at home, like
Hmm.
in Detroit and the White Sox at home. They end the season on a 6 game homestand. I think
Hmm.
that'll be huge for them. Not having to go to the Trop late in September because that's always like a doomsday spot for many teams. You go to the Trop, your like powers get zapped from you because it's so gloomy and gray at the Trop, and there's all the wiring above you, and it's
Yeah,
scary. And it's
it's
there's many
humid,
teams.
it's
Yeah,
gross.
there's
Like
many
it's
teams that go into the Trop in late September and will blow leads in just because it's such a bad place to play, especially in September when it's so humid. It's why the Miami Dolphins have such a advantage in September when they play day games because it's
yeah,
so hot in September in Florida.
yeah. I just yeah, like yeah, to your point, like they get these home games, and unfortunately for the Twins, I mean, well, the Twins also they both teams finish off with a 3 game homestand, but even if both teams go 3-3 in their next 6 games, I much rather have three against Chicago than three against Baltimore. Like you got
Yeah,
to think that the Orioles are going to do everything in their power to make sure that I mean, it's hard to say Corbin Burns, but just given his reputation, you're gonna have to think that the Orioles are going Corbin Burns and Zach Eflin in those two of the final 3 games. Like you don't want to burn them because you have playoffs, but like at the same time, you're also kind of trying
trying
to
to build
keep,
momentum.
yeah, you're trying to also keep the Twins out of it. And who knows, like the Orioles, just how much they've been struggling. Like the first wild card spot isn't really a lock for them. Like they're 3 games up on the Royals, but 3 games isn't a lot.
And the Royals have their next 6 games are three against the Giants and three with the Nationals.
So,
And yeah, there's a real genuine shot that the Royals could pass up. And speaking about the Giants real quick, you sent me this post, or it was the Giants haven't made the postseason since 2021, where they had won 170 games. And even before that, they hadn't made the postseason in 2015 since then. So
yeah.
in the last 9 years, they've only made the postseason once.
Hmm.
And that one year they did make it, they won 107 games.
And won the division. Like the
Yeah.
Dodgers could have 12 straight division wins, but back speaking like you talk about the Giants and with the Orioles, like the Orioles they have a tough 9 games as well. 3 against the Tigers as we mentioned, but then 3 against the Yankees as we've talked about before, and then they finish off the year against the Twins. So the Royals could also take that number 1 spot. Like the Orioles
Yeah.
have dug themselves into a hole. But to your point about the Giants, someone's got to figure out what happened in 2021 because I need answers as to why the Dodgers haven't won 12 straight division titles.
Hey,
It's unacceptable.
it's Buster Posey, it was his swan song out of the league, and then,
I
you
don't
know,
know.
but
I-
it all worked out for you. You had that crazy strike three call to beat the Giants. So you
Yeah,
shouldn't really be complaining.
yeah, I guess I can't complain.
Um, but yeah, I guess moving on, we'll talk about the last thing that I wanted to bring up today. And the NL Central has been won by the Milwaukee Brewers. And what an insane job for them. Just, you lose your manager of like I saw the Pat or Craig Counsell was like the manager for the Brewers for like
Hmm.
10 years, it seemed like.
Hmm.
He was always there.
Hmm.
And you lose him to a division rival with the Cubs, and the Cubs were feeling pretty good coming into the season. Imanaga, Bellinger's back. We're looking to run it back. Like they were hot to end the year last year, and then they
Hmm.
kind of whittled down near the end of the season. And they were like I thought the Cubs were probably in prime position to win the NL Central just because,
Hmm.
you add Imanaga, and if everything stayed the same, I was expecting, especially with the Brewers losing Corbin Burns, I was expecting around 75 wins, like what they were projected to come into the season. But Jackson Chourio, not playing a single game in AAA, going straight from AA to the majors and getting a huge contract on the way. has a 2020 season in his rookie year. And
Mhm.
if it wasn't for Jackson Merrill and Paul Skeens doing what they're doing, I think Jackson Chourio would have been in prime. If Jackson Chourio played in the AL, he'd be the rookie of the year.
Oh yeah, 100%. And you got it, like Pat Murphy won NL Manager of the Year. Like
Yeah,
that should also be unanimous. Like you can't convince me of anybody else in the National League who's worthy of winning Manager of the Year. Just it's Stephen Vogt in the AL with the Guardians, and it's Pat Murphy, and both of those need to be unanimous
first year
without a
managers.
question. And that's crazy that they're first year managers. And maybe it's them getting overlooked by other teams. I don't know, but you look at the Cubs, and I think just the unfortunate reality is that they had so many injuries and a lot of underperforming players like Dansby Swanson, OPS under 700. Nico Horner was hurt throughout the year, but he also had an OPS under 700. Justin Steele got hurt during the year. Jameson Tyone was kind of mid. They didn't really they had to move Kyle Hendricks to the bullpen just because of how terrible, he's been. If I'm getting that right, am I getting that right that it
Yeah,
was Kyle Yeah, okay.
yeah.
I just want to make sure. And obviously Imanaga got off to this ridiculously hot start, and he was still great throughout the year. But the reality of the situation is that he was kind of like an average pitcher that had these amazing starts at points, but there were other times where he was kind of just like an average pitcher. Like there was nothing that really stuck out in some of his starts. Obviously the 10 runs he gave up against the Mets, the 5 runs he gave up against the White Sox, the 7 he gave up against the Brewers. There were, giving up 3 runs, obviously a lot, which is great from a starting pitcher, but not like that ace caliber guy where we usually see them, a guy like Chris Sale, be it where he's giving up 2 runs or less. But back to the Brewers, they're terrifying to me. Like I don't think any team in the National League would want to face them just because you have Churia, who could have won NL Rookie of the Year, Willie Adames, who's going to get paid this offseason with 32 home runs, 109 RBIs. William Contreras has 22 homers and 90 RBIs, batting 280 as a catcher. The only Charlie horses, their rotation is kind of suspect. Their starting rotation is not that terrifying, in my opinion. I think
Mhm.
it's fair to say that Freddie Peralta had a pretty underwhelming season. I think just given the expectations coming into this year, I mean, obviously he has the 193 strikeouts, but a 3.69 ERA is kind of high for a guy like Freddie Peralta, who you were let's be honest, like you were kind of expecting Freddie Peralta to have an ERA like at the 2.5. I think that's fair to say, just given
Yeah.
all of the expectations that were coming into it. And then you have Aaron Savali, Tobias Myers as well. But I don't know. There's just something about their starting pitching, and their bullpen is okay. Obviously, you have Devin Williams shutting it down. Um, you have oh my God, Hobie Milner as well, and McGill, but there's something about their starters that outside of Freddie Peralta, I'm not terrified against Savali, a rookie, and Myers, and then Frankie Montas.
Yeah, that's the one thing, they could really use a Corbin Burns, but obviously, he's traded to the Orioles. But yeah, you know what? Like the Brewers' rotation is really dependent on Freddie Peralta. He's obviously going to be the game one starter, but for game two, do you run Tobias Myers? Is it Colin Rea? Is it Savali? I think obviously I think they might go with Tobias Myers just because
Hmm.
he has like some of the better stuff compared to, Colin Rea, he's 33 with a 4.14 ERA. And I think
Hmm.
obviously you're going to go with Tobias Myers because he's younger. He's kind of the future of the upcoming Brewer staff. And obviously it's only his rookie year too.
Yeah.
Um, I think, but like you said, their rotation is the big question mark about them and one thing also, you lose Christian Yelich for the year, and that's another thing they had to go through, that adversity of not having,
Hmm.
your MVP. Like,
Yeah. I even forgot that Yelich was gone.
yeah,
Is he the
and
problem?
Hey, but they were winning games without him. It's
No,
just,
I know, I know.
but losing your MVP, he had 11 home runs and 21 stolen bases in 73 games, and then that back surgery. Like he
Hmm.
had an OPS of 909,
Hmm.
and he's just not going to play in the postseason. And it's, hopefully for next year he's healthy and returns back to, his form. I just want 2019 Yelich healthy again, man. Like every year it seems like this was the best chance for him to really re-encapsulate that form um that we hadn't seen in 5 years. But another injury, and it's same old with him. But
Yeah.
with the Brewers, you sign Reese Hoskins. He'd missed the entirety of last year with the torn ACL, and
Hmm.
William Contreras has been insanely good for the Brewers, just playing catcher and DH for them most of the time. And then you even signed a guy like Gary Sanchez, who can back up catch and play DH as well. 10 home runs in 81 games. Uh, I still think going into the postseason, the Brewers have to have a better year than last year. They can't have what happened to them last year at home happen again. And
Yeah.
funny enough, it's looking like they might end up playing the
Playing
Diamond.
the Diamondbacks because the Diamondbacks have been struggling as of late. And right now the two teams are playing against each other right now. But yeah, to your point, you look at the wild card. Well, right now the Brewers would be playing the Padres in the wild card. Or no, I'm sorry. You know
Oh,
what? I
they'd be
think
playing the
we
Mets.
we mixed it up. We mixed it up, the wild card. So we confused ourselves here because I'm the um right now the Orioles would play the Royals in the playoffs, and the Twins would play. Am I not mistaken? Wouldn't the Twins play the winner, the third wild card
Oh,
team?
yeah,
We
you're right.
mixed it up.
Yeah.
So right now the Padres and the Mets would be playing each other, and the Brewers would be getting the Diamondbacks
Yeah.
again. The only thing, and look, I mean, I can't, it's hard to evaluate the Diamondbacks, and I know we kind of got off topic, but I think we might be staying a little bit on topic
Mm.
here. But right now, the two teams are playing each other yet again. But you look at the Diamondbacks; they've kind of been struggling. I mean, they lost two of three to the Rockies, and then they also lost two of three to the Brewers, and they won the series against the Rangers, but not a lot of series wins as of late. You look at it, the only series win they had in their last four was that one against the Rangers, but they played two games because of the interleague. But you just look at it, obviously they beat the Brewers last night again on the road in Milwaukee. Is this like
A
setting up to
precursor.
be like, yeah, is this a precursor? Because at one point the Diamondbacks were neck and neck with the Padres as well as the Dodgers for the NL West division title. I mean, we were talking about that four-game series being
Yeah.
like that could have been the
Pivotal.
division. And fortunately, the Dodgers took three of four. But now the Diamondbacks are only two games ahead of the Braves. Like, could the Diamondbacks even fall out of the playoff picture? That's what remains to be seen.
Yeah. And obviously, I think the Diamondbacks will put it together, but they do have a kind of a tough season, like ending the season. You have these three more games against the Brewers,
Hmm.
three against the Giants, and you got three against the Padres. Like it's a really rough way to end the season. Where if you look like a team like the Braves, they play the Marlins uh for three, the Mets for three, and then the Royals for three. And I
Yeah.
think like having those three games against the Marlins would be a lot better to have than three games against the Giants. Because the Giants are obviously division rival in your own division that they don't want to see you make the postseason. They want screw you. And
Yeah. So one of my buddies on Twitter, he said, like, obviously Atlanta's best chance to get into the playoffs is not by catching the Mets, it's by catching the Diamondbacks. So the Braves need to go 6-3, and the Diamondbacks need to go 4-5 in order for the Braves to make the playoffs and for the Diamondbacks to be eliminated. It's not like completely impossible, and if the Braves make it in, like, oh my God, like they could go on like another run. The offense is clicking right now for Atlanta. The pitching staff is always going to be great. The only concern I would really have for Atlanta is that there's too many like quote unquote guaranteed outs in that lineup. I mean, if you watch the Dodgers and Braves series when Kopech shut the door down with runners on second and third and nobody out, like Arcia does not look confident at the plate. Kelnick can get you a hit here or there. Ramon Laureano is kind of like hit or miss, but uh, I just they can also just be terrifying, and the Diamondbacks kind of have to pick up the pace here.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm trusting Kevin Biggio in a
Oh, Kevin
postseason spot
Bishop, yeah.
for the Braves, but you know, like like you said, the Braves have the season series against Atlanta. They
Hmm.
won the season series 5-2. So if they just tie with the Brave or with the Diamondbacks, they're in, and the Diamondbacks are out. And it's one of the things that really kind of screwed over the Diamondbacks was that rough, slow start to the season.
Yeah.
They they were under 500 for so long, and then they really only got back. Uh, they were five above 500 at the All-Star break, and that was only one game ahead. And they obviously went on that huge run where there was talks about could they pass up the Dodgers, but then they've slowly, like you said, they've lost series, lost two. You lose a series to Colorado. I know it's in Colorado, and the elements and the altitude are a huge factor, but you got to win a series against Colorado at this point. And you lose another series to Milwaukee, and you lose 2 out of 3 to Houston. I think there just needs to be a way for the Diamondbacks to really, you know, pick themselves up off the ground. And if they have performances like they got from yesterday from Brandon Pfaadt, where has an immaculate gem
Mhm.
striking out 12, it's going to look a lot better for them. But there's also games where his previous start against Colorado, he couldn't get out of the second inning and gave up 9 runs.
That's the thing is like Brandon Pfaadt is so confusing because he can be like an uber dominant pitcher, but we've also seen times where he's vulnerable,
Yeah.
and that's the one thing where he's kind of like hit or miss to a certain extent, but it'll be interesting to see, how things work out for him. We didn't get to see him in the series against Milwaukee last year. Obviously, he had the great start against the Brewers last night, but his last outing against the Brewers, he didn't even make it out of the second inning. Only went an
Yeah.
inning and two-thirds, gave up 8 runs on three walks. That's the thing is just and zero strikeouts. Like he can have that 12 strikeout, 7 inning dominance where he only gives up one earned run on a solo home run. But, you know, what Brandon Pfaadt are you going to see?
Yeah, and obviously last postseason he was pretty good. He had an ERA of just under 4 in the postseason last year.
Which is
But
really good.
like the rest of the Diamondbacks rotation is such a big question mark. They signed Jordan Montgomery coming into the year, and he's been awful. Uh, just he's been demoted to the bullpen and then called back up for spot start. Or not called back up, but like put back into the starting rotation for spot starts. But it's like Merrill Kelly missed a huge portion of the year. Eduardo Rodriguez
He's
missed,
been horrible.
yeah, he missed up until August, and then even since then he hasn't been good. It's like, what are we gonna get when the Diamondbacks make the postseason? Obviously, you have Zach Gallen, but Zach Gallen isn't even having like a prime Zach Gallen kind of a year. He's not really
Hmm.
striking out that many batters. He spent some time on the injured list. Last year he had 210 innings pitched. He's not even going to reach 150 this year, and
Yeah,
it's something where he used to be a huge bulk guy for or like he could start 8 or go 8 innings, but now he's had some starts where he's only gone to like the fourth inning.
yeah, that's the problem is just, you know, Gallen's been hurt. Merrill Kelly, for the past few years has been dealing with cramping. It's just I don't know, but then again, like we didn't know about the Texas Rangers when, they didn't have
Mhm.
Scherzer or DeGrom, and all they needed were two solid starters and a bullpen that had to be perfect. And the Diamondbacks have a really good bullpen with
AJ Puck.
AJ Puck. Paul Sewald wasn't good in a closing role, but it doesn't matter because you have Justin Martinez pumping 100 on a sinker, 103 miles an hour on a sinker, which is
Yeah.
just stupid. Like they don't need Paul Sewald to be that ninth inning guy that he was last year. And look, obviously, I bashed the AJ Puck deal just because I was like, "What are you doing, giving up the Aaron Judge of AAA?" to the Marlins, but I'm still going to stand by it. But AJ Puck has obviously been phenomenal. They just need two starters to be good, and that's it.
Yeah, and AJ Puck hasn't he's only given up one earned run in the entirety of his tenure with the Diamondbacks so far. But like you said, like their bullpen is really good. And Paul Sewell's on the 15-day IL, and I don't know his status coming into
I
the
didn't even know that. Whoopsie.
yeah, I don't know his status coming into the postseason, but still, like if they can make it, I think they have a genuine shot at not repeating, get it like I don't know if they'll end up making it back to the World Series, but I think they have a genuine shot to at least, they could they upset the Brewers again?
I I don't know. Like something tells me that like Pat Murphy is just not gonna let that happen. But you know, I I don't know. I don't know. The Diamondbacks like Eugenio Suarez has been phenomenal. Ketel Marte has been phenomenal. Corbin Carroll is picking it up back again, is what we've been used to seeing from him prior to his really sluggish start. But I just I don't know with the Diamondbacks this year. Like I something just tells me that they're gonna run out of juice because of how dominant the Padres and then the Dodgers have been all year. Like they've had to play perfect baseball, and at the worst possible time, they're kind of folding.
Yeah. It's, they had to play perfect basically ever since the All-Star break. They had to lock in after the All-Star break, have their festivities, and just get back into that role of we need to make the postseason. Like we spent money on, or we traded for Eugenio Suarez. We spent money on Eduardo Rodriguez, who hasn't played well at all. And we thought we had these options, getting Jordan Montgomery. If you look at like in a vacuum, I thought the Padre or the Diamondbacks had a really good offseason getting both of those two guys,
Hmm.
just because it's like, well, you can add them, you
Plug
have
and
those two,
play.
yeah, plug-in spots into your rotation where they can fit seamlessly into it because you have your obviously your ace was Zach Gallen and Brandon Pfaadt and Merrill Kelly, and like, well, you know what, we did need two back end starters, or not
Hmm.
back end, but we did
No,
need two
but
other starters.
yeah, they did. And the only thing is just they've been horrible.
Horrible,
And
yeah.
and with Eduardo Rodriguez, it's just I, I didn't understand that situation. I'm trying to remember if he was injured or there just wasn't a market for no, but he signed like
He signed
relative
early.
he signed early, so never
Yeah, it
mind.
was in spring training he had gotten hurt.
Yeah, he'd got sorry, that's what it was. But um what's really concerning, I think, from a Diamondbacks perspective is Blake Snell has been what the Giants have paid for in the second half of the year.
Yeah,
And he was in the same position as Jordan Montgomery in terms of a contract. Blake Snell's going to opt out of that contract, and probably teams are going to be smarter. And I think Blake Snell's going
wanting
to
to
the
give him.
like is going to want to give him a bag, and I think Blake Snell's going to collect that final paycheck with Jordan Montgomery, like he has no other option but to take this player option because I don't know. And I'm not trying to sound like a hater, but let's not act like prior to his run with the Tigers that Jordan Montgomery was like this number one or even number two starter to a certain extent. Like Blake Snell is coming off winning a Cy Young. We knew it was a matter of time. With Montgomery, I think he just went on this hot streak that carried into October because when he was with St. Louis, it was like a 3.5 ERA, kind of closer to four, maybe. Like he's a three starter on a contender. And I
Yeah.
just don't see if he opts out. What team is going to go to Scott, or not, I'm sorry, not Scott Boris. Whoopsie. My bad, Jordan. What
He
team,
let go of
like,
Scott
yeah,
Boras.
I know. What team, and ripped him to shreds. But like, what team is going to go to Montgomery's new agents and be like, yeah, here's 3 years, 100 million, or even 3 years, like at 75 million? I don't see it. It just, I think Montgomery just has to be better next year, and he has a ton of opt-outs because that's how Scott Boras does it. And you know what? Maybe he gets traded. Like, who knows what happens?
Yeah, at this point, you don't really know what's going to happen with Montgomery just because he has that $20 million option, and I don't think there's any shot for him to not pick it up. Like I don't even know if you were to put him on the free agent market right now. I don't know if a team's going to give him $20 million for 2 years. I don't even know if
Yeah.
a team would pay him $10 million per year at this
I
point.
think a team would. I thought you were saying 20 million a year. Like I just because he still has like the chase rate, but the problem is like his strikeout to walk ratio is terrible. Like,
He's only striking out 6 batters per 9.
yeah,
Like
he
that's
has
really low.
a 15% K rate to an 8% walk rate, but his chase rate's in the 93 percentile. That's just mainly because he's a left-handed pitcher and
Yeah.
it's impossible. You know, if you have a slider, it's kind of like good night Irene, but he's not doing well in any other category. And if you look at his 2023 year, it wasn't that impressive as well. It
It
was
was
just,
average.
yeah, it was average. Like he's an average pitcher that I think was kind of overvalued because of how well he pitched in October. But, you know, that's what they say. You make your money in the postseason. I just think the Diamondbacks managed his contract horribly with these way too many incentives.
Yeah. Well, that's why they thought, this is a starter who's still available at this point in the offseason, and screw it, might as well give him the money. Like better to have him than to not have him. But I think at this point it would have been better to not have him than to have him.
Yeah, and I just wonder if they outbid themselves. Like, I want to know what other teams were really that in on Jordan Montgomery. Because I remember, like, when that signing happened, we were all talking in our chat, being like, "Whoa, Jordan Montgomery got 25 million a year." Like, we were kind of thrown off by the fact that he got a 3-year, $75 million contract. Like, it didn't make sense to us.
Yeah. Anyways, I think that'll just about do it for this episode of the Breaking News Bears podcast. Once again, I want to thank my co-host, Evan Davis, and I once again want to thank Shohei Ohtani for finally hitting the 50-50. Um, but yeah, that'll just about do it for this episode. Thank you all for listening. I will see you all next week.